tax increases. That's the outtake from last night's budget. A budget that did nothing to fix the underlying structural deficit. A budget that continues unrestrained government spending into the future, leaving federal government spending at 27% or more of the national economy without enough revenue to cover it, without curtailing spending, winding back the growth in recurrent spending on welfare, health care, the NDIS, and by adding more costs such as parental leave and childcare and all sorts of climate and renewables initiatives, well, Labor has just done nothing to repair the main budget problems. It's pretty clear what they're thinking. It's pretty clear that, as is always the way with Labor, they see raising taxes as a whole lot easier than controlling spending. Have a listen to the Treasurer today when asked about tax reform plans.
But I think I've made it pretty clear that last night was the beginning, I hope, of a conversation about the budget position and all the ways that we can improve it. And I hope and expect that that will continue in the lead up, not just to the May 23 budget, but the May 24 budget as well. You know, I think the days of pretending that we don't have structural pressures on the budget are over.
That's called keeping your options open. That's softening people up. That is a Treasurer who can't wait to get his hands on more money from private taxpayers to fund his public sector dreams. And the Prime Minister was a little touchy when asked about the likelihood of higher taxes on breakfast telly this morning.
Well, we had our tax agenda announced last night, which was our multinational tax plans. They're the changes that we went to the election on. We're a government that's fulfilling the promises that we put to the Australian people that they voted for.
Fulfilling promises? Fulfilling promises that people voted for? Prime Minister, you have to be kidding. Surely you remember this promise. You could hardly have missed it.
Reducing power prices by $275.
By 2025, $275 a year.
$275 a year.
We'll get power prices down by $275 a year.
Yeah, so Labor's first budget was notable mainly for the way it took two of their most central election promises and crushed them into the dirt. Inside the political bubble, much of the media want to ignore this or even make excuses for it. But in the real world, it's the main takeout from the budget. A mob that promised to increase real wages has admitted that wages will go backwards for years. And a mob that promised to cut your power bills will see them increase by more than 50%. All this was underscored today with news that inflation has jumped again, this time over 7% to 7.3%. Now, the thing about Labor's inflationary climate and energy policies is that they're driven by ideology and politics rather than rational analysis and practical outcomes. And that's why this has been a slow-motion train wreck unfolding before our very eyes for a long while. On this program in particular, we've warned about the renewable energy push for years, year after year. And in particular, we've called out the Albanese Labor plan since the day it was announced last year. First, it promises, as all these pie-in-the-sky climate plans do, that there will be more renewable energy, lower emissions, plenty of electricity at lower costs and generating more jobs. Bit of magic pudding, bit of everything. The fact that nobody anywhere in the world has ever been able to deliver this doesn't stop them promising this nonsense all over again. Energy security and energy prices ought to be a big election battle, but they aren't this time around, which is a big benefit for Labor, because their plans are, of course, disastrous in this area. And then earlier this year, after the election, we highlighted how Labor's promises on energy prices were dead in the water. The $275 savings promise is still there on Labor's website. You can't get the Prime Minister or any of his ministers to say that number or repeat that promise anymore. That's the reality of what's happened. The price hikes we have seen in power prices and the cold, hard fact that Labor will never deliver on their phony promise to deliver cheaper power. Yeah, and that is now beyond dispute. Even Labor's own budget has revealed the truth, that prices will not only increase by 20% or up to $300 for the average household this year, but also another 30% or more next year, pushing annual household power bills to well over $2,000. Don't forget the Teals or the Greens also. They own this outcome as much as Labor. And to see how much this has changed the political dynamic, look at the coalition mocking the Prime Minister in Question Time today.
Given the Prime Minister often references his Bachelor of Economics degree, can he advise the House how it is possible to have prices rise by more than 50% but fall by $275 at the same time?
It's a good question, but the government hasn't been able to come up with an answer yet. In fact, it's very instructive to unpick the spin from reality by looking at the Treasurer's traditional post-budget speech today. Here he was at the outset.
Now, since taking on this job, I've tried to have a serious go at being as upfront as I can be about what's happening in the economy and what it means for the budget.
Upfront as he can be, making clear promises on electricity prices and wages and then breaking them in his first budget? How is that upfront? Channel 9's Charles Croucher took up the point.
About 40 minutes ago, you said you're going to have a serious go of being as upfront as you can be with Australians. Given that, and given there's probably a one-word answer to this question, should Australians still expect that $275 off their power bills, particularly off pre-election prices?
Yep, it's in the budget.
There's about 4 words.
Oh, very flippant and jolly, wasn't it? The Treasurer laughing with the ABC host about how he had flipped away a question that might matter most to working families, small business owners and pensioners. So flippant was the Treasurer's response, he had to make excuses for himself later.
And I say, as I said to Charles when I rang him straight after the press club, I rang Charles and I rang Laura Tingle and I said, I thought you were asking me a different question. I misheard it and I answered a different question.
Yeah, he misheard the question, hey? Well, let me show you another phrase that none of us could have misheard because we heard it so often in the lead up to the election.
The cost of everything is going up except people's wages.
Everything is going up except people's pay.
The cost of everything is going up, but your wages aren't.
Everything in Australia is going up except people's wages.
Everything's going up except people's wages.
Everything is going up except people's pay.
Everything is rising in this country except for people's wages.
Everything is going up except your wages. We all thought it was an election promise, but it turned out to be the central theme of Labor's first budget.